Hi there, my name is Lindsey, and I am very excited to welcome you to LVND Studios, a space for creative neurodivergent life design. If you found your way here, there's a good chance you're someone who feels deeply, notices everything, and generates ideas faster than you can act on them. Maybe you've spent years or even your whole life trying to fit into paths that were shaped for someone else. If that's you, you're in the right place. Here, we work together to learn about and experiment with the specific wiring of our unique brains, so we can begin to intentionally design a life that fits us, not one where we force ourselves into the tidy little boxes that society expects from us. I created this space because it's what I wish I had when I first learned I was neurodivergent. At the time, I found myself in that very familiar place of what I now know is neurodivergent burnout. I was floundering at work and in my relationships, having almost daily meltdowns from stress and overwhelm, and I was constantly numbing myself with substances and daydreams of running away and starting over. Again, because unfortunately, this was not the first time I had been in this place. It felt like I had been living my entire adult life like this, actually, kind of like I had been dropped blindfolded into a world I didn't recognize with no map and no resources and no one to help me find the way. But then, like so many other late discovered adults, I found myself down the neurodivergence rabbit hole of social media. And it was there that for the first time in my life, I felt like there were people like me, people who understood what it was like to live in this dark and confusing world I had been stumbling through alone. So I started learning, and eventually I got a diagnosis, 2 of them in fact, and the further I dug, the more that blindfold started to kind of fade away, and I could finally see that landscape I had been trying to navigate blind. But I learned pretty quickly that seeing the landscape didn't mean I knew where I was going. Turns out the world of neurodivergence is vast and complicated and incredibly nuanced, and it's going to look different for every single person. And because the world is still collectively learning what it actually means to be neurodivergent, there wasn't a clear path for what came next for me. I still didn't know how to move through work or my relationships or know my emotions and my energy or navigate my day-to-day life in a way that didn't lead me right back to burnout. And I knew I couldn't be the only one standing here, newly aware, deeply relieved, and still completely unsure of how to move forward. It was that moment that led me to create LVND Studios. Here, our work is not therapy and it's not traditional coaching either. It's more of a creative learning and experimentation space that I'm calling a studio, built specifically for neurodivergent folks like you to explore your identity and emotions and your daily life at your own pace and in your own way. Now, you may have noticed something woven through everything I've talked about so far, and it's this idea of creative life design, of approaching our neurodivergent experience through creativity. And I want to tell you why that's not just a nice aesthetic choice, but actually central to how I approach this work. And honestly, part of it is super simple. Creativity is something that gives me meaning. And when I was building this space, I realized I didn't want to just start handing people boring corporate style frameworks and homework assignments. I wanted to build something that felt accessible and fun and kind of alive. Because here's what I know to be true. Learning and growing is always easier when it's enjoyable. When we're engaged and curious and playing, that's where real transformation can happen. But there's more to it than just making things fun. What I've learned through all my research is that neurodivergent brains are often naturally inclined towards creative thinking. And there's actually science behind this. Our brains tend to have different patterns of connectivity, more neural pathways connecting in unexpected ways. And those connections, they're the same ones that allow us to make creative connections, to see solutions and possibilities that others might miss. So when we're struggling with the challenges that come with being neurodivergent, we actually have built-in capacity for creative problem solving. We can use our wiring, the very thing that makes life hard sometimes, to help us navigate through that. And there's something else that completely changed how I think about this. When we engage the creative parts of our brains, it actually becomes harder for our brain to engage in anxiety. There's almost like a toggle effect. So when creativity is active, anxiety quiets down. And when we're in that creative flow, our nervous system can actually find some relief. Now, I'm not saying creativity is a cure-all for everything we face as neurodivergent people. That would be wildly oversimplifying some very complex challenges. But what I am saying is that engaging with creative practices, whether that's drawing or mapping out your patterns or journaling or any other form of creative expression, that can be both soothing and incredibly effective. So that's why everything I create here, whether it's a workbook or a video or a coaching session, I'm going to be weaving creativity into it. Not as a decoration, but as a tool, a way of thinking, a way of designing lives that actually fit who we are. So whether you're in the fog of overwhelm right now, or just beginning to understand yourself, or somewhere in between, there is space for you here. So whether you're watching this on YouTube or exploring the website, I invite you to stay connected. You can subscribe, look around, and find the resources that speak to where you are right now. And just as a final reminder, you are not broken. Your brain makes complete sense, I promise. And together, we're going to design a life that fits you. Welcome to LVND Studios. I am so glad that you're here. Nervous to be on camera.